Just a little bit to start with about Highfield. We are a company, as has been said, based in the UK, but also with offices in Dubai. And we work all over the world, and we're very proud to work closely with Kotham in Pakistan and many other countries. There's a little bit of information, as you can see on the slide, the number of learners that qualify each year with our qualifications, the number of trainers, training centres involved. As you can see, we deal with a lot of qualifications, not just food safety. We do security, we do health and safety, we do management, we do soft skills, lots of qualifications. And the most important thing is that we are regulated. We're regulated by government bodies in both the UK, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, but also we work closely with regulating bodies in the UAE, in Bahrain, and we'll do the same wherever those bodies exist. And this is important for the integrity and consistency of the qualifications. That is just a little bit about myself. I've been involved with food safety for over 50 years now, both in the public sector and the private sector. I've always been involved with developing food safety training courses and involved with training of inspectors, and also implemented HACCP training programs and so on. I have a passion for writing books about food safety, and I'm pleased that long may that continue. Just to focus our mind in the first instance on some of the problems that are happening around the world. Obviously, none of these are as significant as the COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic that we are seeing, that is affecting many, many lives and many businesses, including the food industry. But generally, from a food safety point of view, there's always been large outbreaks and deaths. And these are just a few where food has been responsible for causing deaths, many people ill, and also many people suffering long-term disabilities, such as losing kidneys and all sorts of other things. So very, very worrying when food safety breaks down. And one of the main reasons that the food industry is so keen to ensure that all those involved are trained and qualified. If you look at some food poisoning statistics published by the World Health Organization, you'll see that they estimate that 1 in 10 people will get food poisoning each year. In the USA, it's 1 in 7. And you can see all the other statistics associated with these cases. So it's not just the number of cases, it's the cost to the country, it's the number of people hospitalized, as well as those dying. In Australia, it's 1 in 5. In Canada, it's 1 in 8. And in the UK, it's 1 in 66. But the thing to draw to everybody's attention is that these countries that I've listed are the ones that keep reasonably accurate food poisoning statistics. But these countries believe that they have the best food safety systems and the safest food in the world. That doesn't mean to say there are other countries with equally as good systems, but these countries would all say that their food safety is among the best in the world. So I would ask you to consider that if the figures of 1 in 10 and even worse than that are so high in countries which have the highest standards, how many people will be suffering in countries that have lower standards? Just something to think about. So, why then is food safety so important? Well, we've already seen it protects customers from food poisoning. The customers, more and more with global communication through the internet, mobile phones, etc., are expecting higher standards in food businesses, and even more so now because of COVID-19, where one of the main factors now when people eat out in restaurants and visit hotels and catering establishments, it's not just about the experience and the quality of the food, but now more than ever, people are concerned with the safety within those businesses. Many countries rely, such as Dubai, the UAE, they rely on tourism. And if you don't have high standards of food safety, then tourists tend to stay away. If you are a country that exports food, then again, if people start being ill by the food that is exported, then your markets will start to disappear. You saw from the previous slide the millions and millions of people that have got food poisoning. So how many days off work does that mean? So people are experiencing large numbers of days away from work. And then we've said there's the cost of the medical resources. And the final thing is that from a very early age, from going to school at 5 and washing your hands, to going to university and learning how to look at yourself, and at home, all of us need to protect ourselves and our families. And so food safety is a critical part of everyone's life, not just handlers. It's part of life skills. Now, the other part of this talk is about qualifications. And most people, whether you be students or whether you be mature food handlers, are aware of the need for qualifications. Now, training is most important, but having a qualification to go with the training provides additional significant benefits. So training is important, but qualifications enhance the benefits. First of all, it's achieving a qualification is very important in providing confidence. People are proud whether they've got a basic food safety qualification or a management food safety qualification. It gives them confidence within their workplace, within their job. It also provides recognition from colleagues. It formalizes learning. It may provide compliance because in some countries, certain food handlers have to have certain qualification before they can be a food handler. Qualifications open doors. When you want to move to a new job or you're invited to attend an interview with a new company, they will want to know what qualifications you've got, maybe before they even invite you to an interview. And if the qualification, such as hospitality, actually has a practical element, then qualifications help you demonstrate skills. So qualifications are extremely important to your future career in demonstrating the knowledge that you've got. But qualifications do not necessarily mean that you are competent. And that is one of the themes that I'll be talking about later when I start talking about the opportunities that qualifications can bring and what is the next stage, because we need to go beyond qualifications. Qualifications are not the end point of your study. Qualifications are the beginning of your journey into competency. Now, I looked on the internet when I was invited by the Alliance to present a talk, and this is the title they gave me, Global Food Safety Qualifications. I started to think, what is a global food safety qualification? And so I looked on the internet, which obviously everybody can do, and global food safety qualifications are not really mentioned. Certainly there's no definition of them. They are linked to GFSI, but apart from that, they are in specific circumstances. So generally speaking, there isn't a definition of what a global food safety qualification is, because there is no world body dealing with qualifications. So I thought I would generate my own definition, and when we get to the questions, if anybody has any comments to raise, I'd be very interested. But I believe, from a practical definition point of view, a global food safety or a global qualification is one which is widely available and accepted by many countries and employers throughout the world, and subject to strict quality assurance to ensure integrity and consistency. And that's what puts qualifications that are provided by an awarding organisation at a much higher level than those that are individual in a local area, which are not transportable. And it means that we have the qualification, whether it be in Pakistan or whether it be in America or whether it be in England, that qualification is the same wherever you are. So everybody knows what level that qualification is, and there are clear specifications available as to what is the content of that qualification. So that's what I am saying is a global food safety qualification. Because recognition is a very interesting thing when one talks about qualifications. Because nowadays, we are finding that more and more countries, the governments are deciding which qualifications they will recognize. Now, in most countries, recognition is down to the individual employer. So, for instance, if you had a recognized qualification from an awarding organization, there are many, many corporate companies, world famous companies, that will only accept qualifications that have been third party accredited by an independent awarding body. So you can get situations where individual hotel groups, corporates will accept a qualification, whereas perhaps a government may decide that they will only recognise a qualification that they themselves have been involved with. That's one of the things we'll talk about later when you're looking at recognition of a qualification, and we'll look at why you want a qualification. So, now, what types of qualifications are available? Well, effectively, and remember, I'm talking about vocational qualifications, qualifications that help you in the workplace. We are not talking about degrees. We're not talking about qualifications that take anywhere from 1 year to 7 years to obtain. We are talking about, or I'm talking about, qualifications that may take from between half a day to maybe a week or 2 weeks. So all these qualifications, although they can be at different levels, are relatively short qualifications that are specifically targeted to ensure the start of competency in your workplace. So regulated qualifications are on a qualification framework. And we again are now finding throughout the world that many countries will only recognize qualifications that are on a regulated framework. And they try and get equivalence to their own qualifications through the framework approach. So, for example, this approach is taken in Africa. That's South Africa. It's taken, Bahrain are looking at this. The UAE are looking at this. Obviously, Europe, the UAE, Europe, England, Wales, and so on. All these countries look at a framework. And if your qualifications are accepted on that framework, then the countries accept, that is, the government of the countries accepts the qualification. Now, just because a government doesn't accept a qualification, it doesn't reject it, but it may not endorse it per se, but individual companies within the country are free to accept those qualifications. So a regulated qualification is one that is normally considered to be the top type of qualification. However, there is a problem with regulated qualifications. So regulated qualifications, especially with regard to food safety, that often contain legislation and systems of enforcement that are specific to the country that they were formulated from and developed in. So if you get a qualification that is regulated on food safety from the UK, it has to be relevant directly to the UK, and therefore it will contain UK legislation and UK enforcement systems. Now, that might be acceptable to some people, but it might not be acceptable to other people. So we decided that we would take our regulated qualifications and develop equivalent international qualifications. So the content in terms of food safety is identical, because as you will all know, germs in Pakistan, bacteria, viruses, toxins, spores, etc. in Pakistan behave exactly the same as they do in the rest of the world. The consequences may be different, the type of spread may be different, may relate to the specific foods, but the bacteria will multiply and die at the same temperatures. So our international qualifications are 90% or 95% the same as the regulated qualifications. However, we leave it up to the country. With being involved with 65 different countries, we cannot have a qualification with 65 different versions. So our international qualifications are ideal for the specific country, and we leave it up to the trainer to add the information with regard to the local legislative requirements. And if you're working in a corporate organization, then the corporate organization often have their own rules, and they may be, and usually are, much more stringent than the local regulations. So that corporate organization, if they were training people with an international qualification, they would provide the information with regard to the rules and systems pertaining to that particular operation. So those are the two, those are the difference. But in terms of technical food safety, they are identical. Now, bespoke accredited are something that we allow and support and encourage our registered centres to provide. So if a registered centre has some unique skills and their customers require some unique qualifications that they have the expertise to develop, then they can do so. But the problem is with when a training company develops a qualification, it has limited, very, very limited acceptability, no matter how good it is. And many corporate clients require that that bespoke qualification is given third-party accreditation by an awarding body. So in that case, the training company owns the qualification, but the delivery and quality assurance of that is under the control of the awarding organization. So that is a bespoke accredited qualification. And those are the three types of qualification that you can obtain. Now, what levels of qualification are there? Because if you look at the European and the UK system, you'll see, generally speaking, in food safety, whether that be food safety or whether it be HACCP or whether it be auditing or allergen control, there are usually up to 4 different levels. And you might be deciding which one you want to go for. How are they targeted? Well, level 1 is an awareness qualification, usually lasts about half a day. and it's also for people that are low-risk food handlers. So this means that people, for instance, involved with grocery, or maybe involved with fruit and vegetables, maybe even in a factory where they aren't handling the finished products. So these are low-risk food handlers because the risk of their activity, the risk of causing food poisoning, is very, very small. So they only need a limited amount of knowledge to carry out their job safely. Then we look at the high-risk food handlers, and these are the ones that are involved primarily in the hospitality and the catering industry. Could also be supermarkets, where they're involved with the delicatessen counter, where they're involved with the rotisserie, where they're involved with cooked foods and so on. So that's the level 2 course, and that usually lasts for a day, about 6 or 7 hours. And then we move into the supervisory and the management level. Now, level 3, and these courses usually are about between 1 and 3 days. So if they're only 1 day, then they have obviously a limited content. And normally for a level 3 food safety, it normally takes 3 days. And these are targeted at supervisors. And then you've got the level 4, which are targeted at managers. But again, and those are 3 to 5 days. So for instance, a level 4 food safety in catering is 3 days, but a level 4 qualification in food safety in manufacturing would be 5 days, because manufacturing is a lot more complex and scientific in the way that they deal with food safety compared with a catering operation. So those are the different levels. Now, some people might say, well, can I do any of those qualifications, or do I have to do a level 1, then a level 2, then a level 3, and then a level 4? The answer is that it very much depends on the qualifications and the knowledge you already have, the position you've got, and if you've got a background as a degree. So, for example, somebody who's a trainer with a degree in food microbiology could probably go straight onto a level 4 food safety. Whereas somebody who was a food handler who aspired to be a supervisor or a manager and was just starting out on their career would probably be advised to do a level 2 first, then a level 3, and then a level 4. So it's up to the training company to talk to the learner to determine what's best for them, because there's no point doing a higher level course and failing. So it's up to the training company to work with the learners to determine what's suitable. Generally speaking, people tend to do a lower level course before they do a higher level course. Now, many of you will be thinking, okay, what should I consider when choosing a qualification? What do I need to think about? The first thing I would say is, when you're spending money and time doing a qualification, this is beyond training. Training is important as a stepping stone to competency. If it's just the knowledge you want without the recognition, then you don't need a qualification. But if you want the recognition and the transportability of the knowledge that you've got, then you need a qualification. But the first thing is to make sure that, are there any local regulations governing the qualification you're doing? Because if you're in one part of Pakistan, it might be within that region that they only accept or acknowledge a level 2 qualification that they themselves provide. So by doing a regulated qualification, if they don't recognize it, then it means that you will have to sit 2 qualifications. So you'd have the local qualification because it was a legal requirement, and then because you might be thinking of traveling abroad or going to some other country or going to a corporate organization that wanted a regulated qualification, you'd need also a regulated qualification. So the first thing is, what are the local legal requirements? Now, it's quite interesting. Some countries do have local legal requirements for level 1 and level 2, but I haven't as yet come across any that have requirements for level 3 or level 4. So that's up to the supervisors and the managers. So there's less of a risk. So that's the first thing. The next thing you need to consider is which sector of the industry you're working in, and what do the employers within that area, what do they require? Do they accept, do they want that qualification, or do they want a different qualification? So you need to try and be aware of the employer's requirements. Now, the next thing is, will it lead to competency? Is the content relevant to your industry? There's no point if you're in manufacturing taking a catering qualification, and there's no point if you're in catering taking a manufacturing qualification. And the other thing is it up to date? Is the information within there 20, 30 years old? Because, believe you me, food poisoning, food safety is changing all the time. And what caused problems 30 years ago doesn't cause the same problems now. And there are new problems that didn't exist 30 years ago. So you've got to make sure the content is up to date and relevant to your organization. If you intend to travel, you need to know if it's going to be accepted within other countries. Is there a system for you or an employer to check that the certificate is genuine? There are so many fraudulent certificates being issued now. People don't want to do the training, they don't want to do the knowledge, they just want to pay for a certificate. And you can get certificates without studying. However, if you go to an employer with a Highfield certificate, that employer, free of charge, can go onto our website and use our check cert, which basically means he puts in your name and the certificate number in our website, and that will tell him whether it's genuine or not. So we are doing everything we can to protect the value of the qualification for you and to stop the cheating and the people using fraudulent certificates. So that's something else you need to be aware of. And are there local competent training providers with a reputation for high standards in both delivery and examination integrity? And obviously, I'm talking in Pakistan, organizations like Kotham that you can rely on. You know that if you've got a qualification from Kotham, they've got an excellent reputation. We work very closely with them, and you can be assured that the content's going to be relevant, up to date, and the lecturers are going to be good in the delivery, and they will ensure the exam integrity. And finally, are the training companies independently regulated? Because in many countries, there are many training organizations, and some of them are very good and some of them are very poor. So if you go with a training company, how good is that training company going to be? Who is watching and regulating that training company? Because there's no point spending time studying if you end up with a qualification that is not considered appropriate. It may be considered a very weak qualification, and it won't enhance your career. So make sure that the training companies are independently regulated for their quality. Now, when we're looking at food safety qualifications, these are some of the things that we have to consider and that anybody who puts qualifications together must consider. In the first instance, are the qualifications based on science and best practice? We've got to keep it up to date. We involve all the stakeholders. We talk to the learners. We talk to the employers. We talk to the trainers. We talk to the enforcement officers, the government bodies. We talk to everybody to make sure that we take all their thoughts into account when developing our qualifications. We make sure, with the help of our trainers and training organizations, that they're relevant to the country and the organization within that country. We ensure that our qualifications are linked to international standards. We have very strict quality assurance, and we audit our centres regularly. So if learners have got concerns, they can always contact us. but fortunately we don't get contacted very frequently because our training centres are among the best in the world. And we've got CertCheck, which I've already described. And finally, we try and ensure continuous improvement of our qualification. Now, I mentioned before, the qualification is, if you like, the starting point. What we need to do is turn those qualifications into competency. So food safety requires more than food handlers and managers obtaining food safety qualifications. We must implement that knowledge within the business. And to do this, we need the commitment of the owner. We need effective management, and we need effective food safety management systems. And this can be achieved by keeping the food safety knowledge relevant to your business up to date, and through internal auditing and independent auditing by a competent food safety specialist. So we are now starting to look at the opportunities that you can take to turn your qualification into something that is much more potentially valuable within the food industry. And what we've developed after many years of working in Dubai have a system which is mandatory called a person in charge system, which I worked with the Dubai government in putting that system together. It's a very, very effective system. It's been in operation now for many years in Dubai. But I wanted that system to be available internationally. So I've modified it. I believe I've improved it. And we are offering this to many organizations and many countries. And it's having a manager within the business in charge of food safety. So there isn't a qualification, a single qualification that exists for a manager in charge of food safety. We decided to put something together. And this is about protecting profit, protecting business, and protecting customers. So, Manager in Charge program is targeted at those people that are already managing food safety within the business, but they may not have the qualifications or the systems or the quality assurance that we can provide. So the foundation is having the best qualifications. And also, we provide businesses and managers with the knowledge and the tools to take responsibility for the food safety, so it's beyond the qualifications. We don't need to rely, they do not need to rely on the external auditor or the food inspector to identify the problems, because we're giving the managers the tools to identify and correct the problems before the intervention of the external auditor or the food inspector. We make sure that we build on the existing food safety systems. We don't try and replace what is already there and working. Most food businesses have some kind of food safety systems. And the staff understand these systems, and normally they just require a little improvement. And our system is designed not to replace everything, but to keep what is good about the existing systems and enhance them. And yes, we need to have verification, but it's important that you have internal verification or auditing and external auditing to make sure the standards remain at the highest level continuously. You don't need to rely on the external auditor to tell you what's wrong, because if you're a manager in charge of food safety, you will know what is wrong. And the final thing that's very important is that you must keep up to date with the information about food safety that could affect your business. And therefore, we are requiring continuous professional development, CPD. So all these people have to do a certain number of food safety hours each year. But as you'll see, that those food safety hours actually relate to their day-to-day work. So it's very practical to achieve them. So who is this person in charge? Well, it's the manager, as I've said, directly responsible for the food safety related operations, with direct authority, control and supervision of the food handlers during the entire time of the operation in the kitchen or the production area. So a chef could be a manager in charge, but in a large hotel, you have maybe a hygiene manager. The hygiene manager cannot be the person in charge because the hygiene manager doesn't work in the kitchen. So if you don't work in the location, you can't be responsible for the day-to-day supervision of the food handlers. And the manager in charge has to effectively communicate between the owner's requirements and between the food handlers. And very important, we have to make sure that there are consequences for good and bad practices. That is reward and punishment. Good practices are rewarded, bad practices result in some form of punishment. And these are the kind of things that the manager in charge is responsible for. And remember, this isn't just a job where he's solely responsible for food safety. The manager in charge will have another job, whether it be a chef, whether it be a food and beverage manager, whether it be a manager that is maybe a sous chef, maybe somebody who is just a general supervisor. They'll be working in the business already. This is additional responsibility. So every business has to employ one full-time on-site manager in charge. They're certified. They have to have level 3 qualifications in food safety, level 3 in HACCP, level 3 in auditing, and level 3 in allergen management. Having that suite of qualifications gives them an overall background and knowledge suitable in food safety for all supervisors within the catering operation. And they can build on that knowledge to provide a safe food sale. That's the important thing, selling safe food, protecting the customers. If the business operates 2 shifts, then it will need 2 managers in charge, one for each shift, because one has to be there permanently. Every month, the manager in charge has to undertake a monthly food safety audit. That is a written audit. They have to also ensure that the faults, the non-conformities, violations, whatever you like to call them, that anything that they find that is wrong is rectified as quickly as possible. In addition, as I've said, they must undertake 24 hours of continual professional development. They've got to attend the courses and pass the exam, which I referred to on point 1. And if they leave the business and the business wants to keep within the scheme, they must be replaced within 30 days and certified within 45 days. And these are some of the responsibilities that the manager in charge. So if you're already a person who's responsible for food safety within your organizations, are you able to say that you can do all of these things? That you are competent, you know all the food safety risks in your business. You ensure that all the food safety policies and procedures, and that includes HACCP, are maintained and implemented. You make sure all the food handlers are continuously supervised to ensure safe food practices. And you also ensure, and this is very important, you're not only responsible for your own competency, you're responsible for the competency of the food handlers working for you. So you make sure when they come back from their training, their food safety training, they retain their knowledge because you make them implement what they've learned every day. You make sure they wash their hands when they're supposed to wash their hands and how they're supposed to wash their hands, that they wear clean protective clothing, they clean and disinfect efficiently. So a well-run operation from a food safety point of view actually denotes a competent manager. It's a reflection. The standards on the business are a reflection of the standards of the manager. So you've got to identify the risks and controls and take corrective action. You've got to liaise with the food inspectors, with the enforcement officers. And you make sure when you get new people working in the business, employed within the business, they have training on food safety prior to them starting work. And you make sure as quickly as possible that they are competent to carry out their duties safely. You will carry out on-the-job training. You provide toolbox talks. You'll give information to people about what's happening. You will, for instance, this person will be responsible for giving advice on COVID-19, quite likely, within the business, because as you will know as food handlers, that many of the controls for the COVID-19 are the same as for the food. So keep yourselves up to date and make sure you're competent. So those are the MIC's responsibilities. And these are the specific day-to-day activities. So they carry out opening, closing checks. Make sure only food is delivered from approved suppliers. Make sure that the food handlers are starting work, that they're clean and fit, with no septic cuts, etc. Make sure there's effective supervision throughout the day. Make sure there's no temperature abuse, which is one of the main factors that causes food poisoning. Food at room temperature for too long, not cooked properly or not stored properly. Make sure you've got an effective, clean, sanitized thermometer that is used properly and regularly to make sure that everything is achieved safely. Make sure that cleaning and disinfection is safe, pest control is effective, waste management is appropriate, and all the materials that are needed to secure high standards of food safety, and that particularly means hand washing, all the materials required to replenish regularly throughout the day. You can't keep a business clean if you've got no cleaning products, no cleaning materials. You can't wash your hands if you've got no soap. Very basic, but it's very, very important. And how do you obtain CPD hours? Well, this is just a few ideas. You can give toolbox talks. You can implement hygiene improvements. You can participate in the Highfield Food Safety Forum. We have a forum which is free of charge, which anybody can join in and find out about what is happening with regard to food safety. So there are similar forums. It doesn't matter whether it's a Highfield forum or another forum, but get involved in finding out what's happening in the world of food safety. They will undertake documented internal audits, so you get actual time allowed for undertaking the audits, which you need to do on a monthly basis. They may attend seminars, and nowadays some of these seminars, like this one, can be free of charge and online. That's the same, obviously, as now we're saying webinars instead of seminars. Again, many webinars are available free of charge. They might write and publish articles, they might obtain additional qualification, and they might be involved in preparing reports on food poisoning and food complaints. Those are just a few ideas of the way that you can gain your CPD points, because you've got to get 24 hours annually. And for the business can get a certificate of excellence in managing food safety. And to do that, the business must demonstrate that it has the requisite numbers of managers in charge. That's one per shift per business. Monthly internal audits have been undertaken and are satisfactory, and corrective action has been taken. 50% of the managers are trained to level 3, and 50% of the high-risk food handlers are trained to level 2. They must also receive satisfactory reports from the food inspectors from the local authority, and a satisfactory annual report from a third-party specialist auditor. That's what the food business has to do to obtain a certificate of excellence. Now, just to finish, there are many of you perhaps this evening that are not managers in charge of food safety. You may not be employed within a business, or you could, for instance, be at university or college, or you may be employed within the business, but you are not in charge of food safety. But you have some qualifications and you want recognition beyond the qualifications. So we've developed a certified manager program, which allows you to put letters after your name as well, if you obtain the qualifications. And the aim that we've got is for this to be accepted as a benchmark for all managers responsible for food safety. So these are the requirements, and it varies depending on whether you're in catering or whether you're in manufacturing. And there are two main certified management certificates: catering, manufacturing, supervisory level or manager's level. So those are very basically what you need. You need the appropriate qualifications. You can be having the food safety for supervisor in catering or manager in catering, or you can have the, that's a level 3 and a level 4, a food safety supervisor for catering. So if you're just doing the level 3 food safety, the level 3 auditing, the level 3 catering, and the level 3 allergen So that will give you the safety supervisor in catering. A food safety manager in catering has to do a level 4 food safety in catering, level 3 auditing, level 4 catering HACCP, and a level 3 allergen management. Now for manufacturing, a supervisor has to do a level 3 food safety manufacturing, level 3 auditing, level 3 HACCP for manufacturing, and a food safety manager in manufacturing has to do a level 4 food safety management, level 3 auditing, level 4 manufacturing HACCP. And the thing that